I'm Dr. Sehrish Zafar and I welcome you to Key to Pharmacology. Let's discuss each question in the UHS 2023 Annual Exam Pharmacology paper one by one with detailed explanations. Starting off with question number 1, part A. Acetaminophen, an analgesic antipyretic drug, is quite safe in therapeutic doses, but when its dose exceeds 10 grams, it's associated with hepatotoxicity. Briefly explain the mechanism involved in toxicity of this drug. This is a very typical question, an easy one I would say, because the answer is written as such in your books. There is a chapter by the name of drug metabolism in Minicadson, and the same chapter goes by the name of biotransformation in Big Cadsink. Either ways, it is very nicely explained and illustrated how acetaminophen is metabolized and how and under what conditions this metabolism goes overboard and causes toxicity, specifically to the hepatic cells. Acetaminophen normally undergoes phase 2 metabolism and it is conjugated with sulfates and glucuronides. So sulfation and glucuronidation result in metabolism of acetaminophen in normal quantities. लेकिन जब ये दोनों सल्फेशन और ग्लूकुरोनाइडेशन सैचुरेट हो जाएंगे, बहुत ज़्यादा acetaminophen है और ये दोनों आपके ग्लूकुरोनाइड्स ख़त्म हो गए, सल्फेट्स ख़त्म हो गए, now the excess acetaminophen is going to undergo phase 1 metabolism through the cytochrome enzymes. This phase 1 metabolism results in formation of a highly reactive intermediate molecule which is called N-aminoparabenzoquinone. NAPQI. This NAPQI is very toxic to the liver cells. But again, at this stage, our metabolism, the liver tries to control the damage. Kaise? NAPQI is rendered harmless by detoxifying it with glutathione. Glutathione conjugates the NAPQI and results in formation of acetaminophen mercapturate, which is harmless and excreted out of the body. But then imagine a state when acetaminophen is in such large quantities कि सल्फेशन सैचुरेट हो गई, ग्लूकुरोनाइडेशन फेज़ 2 मेटाबॉलिज्म सैचुरेट हो गए, फेज़ 1 स्टार्ट हो गया, फेज़ 1 से NAPQI बनना शुरू हो गया, देन दैट NAPQI undergoes the glutathione conjugation, but now even the glutathione stores are depleted. So now there is NAPQI, which is a very toxic intermediate metabolite in excess and it is not being detoxified by the liver. Now it starts causing hepatic necrosis, damage to the liver cells and resultant acute hepatotoxicity. अगर आप साथ में flow chart draw कर देंगे, it would be even better to understand and score more marks for you. Question number 1, part B. What is the relation of loading dose to plasma half-life? Justify your answer with formula equation. This question carries 2 marks. This is a confusing part. There is no direct equation or formula that relates loading dose to half-life. बीच में एक parameter है which is missing here to trick the students, not to trick exactly but to check the depth of knowledge of the students. Loading dose is dependent upon only one parameter and that is volume of distribution. The formula for loading dose goes by loading dose is equal to volume of distribution into target plasma concentration. The only factor that controls loading dose is the volume of distribution. However, volume of distribution is also one of the parameters on which half-life is dependent. The formula for half-life goes as half-life is equal to 0.693 into volume of distribution divided by clearance. So, volume of distribution is directly proportional to plasma half-life. जिन drugs का volume of distribution ज़्यादा होता है, they tend to stay inside the body because they are distributed throughout the body. Sometimes they are bound to the intracellular proteins also and they do not leave the cells easily. So they are cleared later on and they have a longer half-life. Such drugs would require a loading dose because most of it is distributed inside the body. It has a very long plasma half-life and the steady state concentration is dependent upon the plasma half-life. That means it is going to take at least 4 to 5 half-lives for any drug to reach a steady state plasma concentrations, which is generally our therapeutic concentration. So now correlating all these 3 things, हम finally conclude ये करते हैं कि the drugs which have a longer half-life will take longer time to reach the steady state concentration. these are the drugs which are going to have larger volume of distributions also. So they are going to require a loading dose. A loading dose to cover the large volume of distribution as well as to reach the target plasma concentration earlier than the steady state concentration time that is required, which is 4 to 5 half-lives, which is going to be a very long time in case for the drug which have longer half-lives. So it is overall quite a confusing question because you have to connect one equation to the other and to the next and to the next. However, अगर आप briefly भी इस बात को explain कर जाते हो so that the examiner understands that you get the question, you understand what the examiner is trying to ask, that the loading dose is dependent upon the volume of distribution and the volume of distribution in turn decides the plasma half-life. So the drugs which have a longer plasma half-life will definitely require a loading dose in order to reach their target plasma concentrations rapidly. Question number 2, part A. A 13-year-old boy playing under a tree accidentally hit a beehive with his ball. He was stung multiple times by agitated bees. He was rushed to nearby hospital due to difficulty in breathing and dizziness. He was given intramuscular adrenaline and supportive therapy. Justify the use of adrenaline in context to antagonism and also highlight the receptors involved. Again, part A's are normally very typical and very easy. This is a simple question of anaphylactic shock and justification of use of adrenaline in anaphylactic shock.
Anaphylactic shock का basic culprit जो है वो histamine होता है. There is massive release of histamine which acts on its own histamine receptors present in the lungs and in the blood vessels. और ये दो systems को severely affect करता है. एक तो ये lungs में bronchospasm cause करता है which causes difficulty in breathing. The patient cannot breathe जिसकी वजह से उसकी oxygen saturation drop करना शुरू हो जाती है. On the other hand, in the blood vessels it causes vasodilation which results in hypotension और ये hypotension shock में convert हो सकती है which can be a life threatening situation. इनको ट्रीट करने के लिए हम एपिनेफ्रीन देते हैं, which is the drug of choice. Why? Because epinephrine acts on the beta 2 receptors in the lungs, where it causes bronchodilation, which relieves the shortness of breath, and it acts on the alpha 1 receptors present in the blood vessels, जिनको stimulate करके it causes vasoconstriction, जिसकी वजह से blood pressure rise कर जाता है and shock reverse हो जाता है. Why don't we use a histamine antagonist here? बिकॉज अगर हम हिस्टामिन का एंटागोनिस्ट देंगे तो वो कंपीट करेगा हिस्टामिन रिसेप्टर के लिए विद हिस्टामिन और कंपेटिटिव एंटागोनिज्म विल ऑलवेज टेक अ लॉन्गर टाइम. हमारे पास इमरजेंसी सिचुएशन में इतना टाइम नहीं होता. सो एपिनेफ्रीन इज अ फिजियोलॉजिकल एंटागोनिस्ट. दैट मीन्स इट एक्ट्स ऑन इट्स ओन रिसेप्टर्स, not on the histamine receptors, and it produces opposite effects. तो ये एक physiological antagonist है which will occupy the vacant adrenoceptors and produce a prompt relief of symptoms.
The next part, question number 2, part B. Give the role of beta-arrestin in G protein receptor regulation. Beta-arrestins cause temporary desensitization of the G proteins. The question number 2, part B is very nicely explained in mini GuideSync. Beta-arrestins are proteins that bind to the G proteins from intracellular side. कैसे? When the G proteins are excessively stimulated because of the agonist. So the beta-arrestins, they bind intracellularly to the G proteins which are excessively stimulated and they cause delinking of those G proteins with their adenyl cyclase or their subsequent mechanisms. ये delinking हो जाती है जिसकी वजह से जो excessive stimulation होती है वो नहीं होती है और desensitize हो जाता है cell to the excessive receptor activation. So beta-arrestins have a very temporary role. As soon as this excessive stimulation is gone, the beta-arrestins, they get detached from the G proteins and the G proteins can work normally with their underlying signal transduction mechanisms as before. Question number 3, part A. A 65-year-old man came to hospital with history of dementia. On history and examination, the neurophysician diagnosed him as a case of Alzheimer's disease. Enumerate 4 drugs which can be used for its treatment. For the question number 3, part A, it is simple enumeration. The question is not very common. Alzheimer's कभी कभी पूछा जाता है, but I wouldn't say that it is difficult. बिकॉज द आंसर इज़ राइट देयर इन योर मिनी कैटजिंग. आपके मिनी कैटजिंग पे आप अगर इफ़ यू डिग आउट इन बिटवीन द चैप्टर तो आपको ज़ाहिर है ड्रग्स के नाम मिल ही जाएंगे. बट वेन एवर यू सी अ क्वेश्चन जिसमें ड्रग्स के नाम इनलिस्ट करने हो तो इट इज़ बेस्ट दैट यू गो टू योर समरी टेबल्स. समरी टेबल्स के अंदर अगर आप पढ़ोगे तो देर इज़ अ सेपरेट कॉलम विच सेज इनडायरेक्ट एक्टिंग ड्रग्स विच आर यूज फॉर Alzheimer's disease. This question is basically from the parasympathomimetic drugs. And the drugs are rivastigmine, galantamine, donepezil and tacrine. 4 नाम दिए हुए हैं, 4 आपसे पूछे गए हैं. Question number 3, part B. Enumerate 4 beta blockers with intrinsic sympathomimetic activity. What are their advantages over other beta blockers? Beta blockers with intrinsic sympathomimetic activity or partial agonist activity includes acebutolol, cartiolol, celiprolol, penbutolol and pindolol. What are the advantages of drugs with intrinsic sympathomimetic activity? They are going to cause less bradycardia because उनका थोड़ा थोड़ा sympathomimetic action है. They have a partial agonist activity. वो ब्लॉक कर रहे हैं ओवरऑल रिसेप्टर को लेकिन थोड़ा सा स्टिमुलेटरी एक्शन भी प्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं. सो ब्रेडिकार्डिया जो नॉर्मल बीटा ब्लॉकर्स करेंगे दे आर गोइंग टू कॉज रिलेटिवली लेसर ब्रेडिकार्डिया एज कम्पेयर टू दोज. They are going to cause lesser bronchoconstriction, so relatively safer in patients who are asthmatics or COPD patients. They are going to cause less derangement of the lipid profile. They are going to cause less rebound hypertension on sudden withdrawal of the drug. So basically जितने भी disadvantages हैं, adverse effects हैं बीटा ब्लॉकर्स के, वो सब की इंटेंसिटी डिक्रीज कर जाती है when you use a drug which has partial agonist activity or intrinsic sympathomimetic activity. Question number 4, part A. A middle-aged diabetic male presented in emergency in altered state of consciousness and shock. The attendants told the doctor that he had zero urine output for past 2 days. Which drug should be given to this patient to provide hemodynamic stability? Explain the reasons for your choice. This carries 2 marks. It's a very simple question. We have discussed it in our reels also.
Role of dopamine in cardiogenic shock. Dopamine has dose-dependent effects which can be utilized in the treatment of cardiogenic shock. Low dose, that is 1 to 2 microgram per kg per minute, specifically stimulates D1 receptors. D1 receptors are present in the renal vasculature. तो ये vasodilation cause करती है जिसकी वजह से renal perfusion improve कर जाती है, which decreases the chances of renal shutdown. तो compensated state of shock में हम हमेशा prefer करते हैं कि हम renal perfusion को increase करके shock को revert कर सकें. So we prefer the low dose dopamine. अगर उस पर हम देखते हैं कि पेशेंट डिकम्पनसेशन पे फिर भी जा रहा है, द पेशेंट इज स्टिल नॉट इम्प्रूविंग, देन वी शिफ्ट टू इंटरमीडिएट डोज ऑफ 2 to 10 माइक्रोग्राम पर केजी पर मिनट. इस डोज पे बीटा 1 रिसेप्टर स्टिमुलेट होते हैं विच आर प्रेजेंट इन द हार्ट, सो देयर इज इंक्रीज्ड इन हार्ट रेट विच कॉजेज एन इंक्रीज इन द कार्डिक आउटपुट. तो हम ट्राई करते हैं कि हार्ट रेट को बढ़ा के, कार्डिक आउटपुट को बढ़ा के हम रीनल परफ्यूजन को इम्प्रूव कर सकें. ये तब होगा जब देयर इज अ वर्सनिंग स्टेट ऑफ कॉम्पनसेटेड शॉक. अगर हम नोट करते हैं कि उससे भी ज़्यादा पेशेंट जो है वो वर्सन कर चुका है और डिकम्पनसेटेड स्टेट में जा चुका है, एंड द पेशेंट इज अनएबल टू मेंटेन द ब्लड प्रेशर, देन वी कैन गो फॉर द हाई डोज ऑफ डोपामीन विच इज मोर देन 10 माइक्रोग्राम पर केजी पर मिनट. दिस विल स्टिमुलेट द अल्फा 1 रिसेप्टर्स इन द ब्लड वेसल्स एंड कॉज वेसोकंस्ट्रिक्शन इन ऑर्डर टू इंक्रीज द ब्लड प्रेशर. ये सिर्फ डिकम्पनसेटेड स्टेट में हमारा लास्ट रिजॉर्ट होगा जब हमें नजर आ रहा है कि कोई भी मेजर्स जब तक हमने ली हैं दे आर अनएबल टू इम्प्रूव द रीनल परफ्यूजन एंड कार्डिक आउटपुट एंड दे आर नॉट एबल टू मेंटेन द ब्लड प्रेशर.
जहाँ पे भी अगर ये बात मेंशन की जाती है कि एक पेशेंट शॉक में है एंड द पेशेंट हैज़ जीरो यूरिन आउटपुट विच मीन्स दैट द पेशेंट इज गोइंग इनटू रीनल शट डाउन. सो यू नीड टू वर्क ऑन द रीनल ब्लड फ्लो. अगर रीनल ब्लड फ्लो को फौरी इम्प्रूव नहीं किया जाएगा तो रीनल शट डाउन हो गया तो इट इज़ गोइंग टू लीड टू decompensated shock and the patient cannot survive. So the primary objective here is to improve renal blood flow, and the only drug that increases renal blood flow here is dopamine, and that too in low dose. Low dose dopamine is going to act on D1 receptors in the renal vasculature and cause vasodilation, which is going to improve renal blood flow. Once the renal blood flow is improved, we can slightly increase the dose of dopamine to cause vasoconstriction through action on the alpha receptors, and it can cause improvement in shock in patients who are having vasodilation, decreased blood pressure. But here, improving the blood pressure is not the primary objective. The primary objective is to improve the renal blood flow, and that is through the action of dopamine on D1 receptors. Question number 4, part B. A 52-year-old female with chronic heart failure requires treatment for her open angle glaucoma. Tabulate at least 3 categories of topically acting agents that she may use. Also give examples and mechanism of action of each. Again, a very typical question because it is right there tabulated in your books. You just have to memorize it and copy paste. If you see your table, the table 10.2 in your 10th chapter, we have beta blockers, we have prostaglandins, and we have alpha-2 selective agonists, we have cholinomimetics, we have alpha agonists. You have to write down their names and their mechanism. Everything is written down in the table. You can choose any 3 out of the list and tabulate it. Question number 5. A 60-year-old hypertensive and diabetic patient was prescribed a drug by his physician to optimize his blood pressure level. However, almost 8 weeks into using this drug, the patient developed pain in joints. His big toe was particularly affected. Also, his glycemic control and lipid profile were adversely affected. Part A. Which drug was prescribed that produced these effects? A patient was given an antihypertensive which caused hyperuricemia, hyperlipidemia, hyperglycemia. Does it ring the bell? Yes. The answer is thiazide diuretics. The patient was given some thiazide diuretic for hypertension. अगर आप thiazide diuretics लिख दोगे तो भी आपको आंसर मिलेगा. अगर आप hydrochlorothiazide specifically the drug name लिख दो तो भी आपको मार्क मिलेगा. Part B. Give its mechanism of action and its effect on calcium levels. जब भी किसी डायूरेटिक का मैकेनिज्म पूछा जाए, it is best that you make the diagram. In this case, thiazide diuretics are going to block the NCC transporter, which is the sodium chloride co-transporter in the distal convoluted tubule, resulting in excretion of sodium. Because of the blockade of this NCC transporter, there is a subsequent effect on the sodium calcium exchanger on the basolateral side, because of which more calcium is reabsorbed into the distal convoluted tubules and into the bloodstream. Calcium levels के ऊपर क्या effect आएगा? Blood calcium levels are going to increase while urinary calcium levels are going to decrease with the thiazide diuretics. Part C. Considering the patient's profile, what could be a suitable and alternative antihypertensive drug that can be prescribed to him and why? This question again has 2 marks. बहुत ईजी और इम्पॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन है. पेशेंट की प्रोफाइल ये है कि पेशेंट इज़ अ 60-year-old हाइपरटेंसिव एंड डायबिटिक. अ पेशेंट हु हैज़ डायबिटीज़ एंड हाइपरटेंशन, उसकी डायबिटीज़ अलोन इज़ अ स्ट्रॉन्ग clinical indicator for prescribing ACE inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers because they prevent diabetic nephropathy. If a patient has hypertension, ACE inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers will be the best choice here because they will not only act on the blood pressure but they will also be delaying the progression of diabetic nephropathy in that patient. That is the reason you should prefer using ACE inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers in such patients. Question number 6. Following coronary angioplasty, a patient is discharged from the hospital on antiplatelet drugs to prevent thrombosis. Part A. Classify antiplatelet drugs based on their mechanisms of action. This is for 4 marks. In the chapter of drugs used in coagulation disorders in your mini CADSync, this chapter starts with the classification of all the drugs that are used in coagulation disorders, and we have the drugs which act as antiplatelet along with the mechanisms. The first one is aspirin, which is a COX-1, COX-2 inhibitor. The second one is glycoprotein 2B3A inhibitors. The third one is ADP inhibitors, and the fourth one is phosphodiesterase inhibitors. So the classification is right there. You just have to add 1 or 2 names to each group. Part B. What is the pharmacological basis of the irreversible antiplatelet action of aspirin? Aspirin has an irreversible antiplatelet action because it is an irreversible inhibitor of cyclooxygenase 1 and cyclooxygenase 2, while all other NSAIDs are reversible inhibitors. Because aspirin is irreversible in its action, once it blocks the COX-1 enzymes in the platelets cannot synthesize new COX-1 enzymes because the platelets are anucleate structures. They do not have a nucleus, they do not have the synthetic machinery to make new enzymes. Once their COX-1 is inhibited, it will remain inhibited for the lifetime of the platelet, that is 7 to 8 days. Question number 7. Tabulate the different anti-epileptic drugs acting on GABA-related targets along with their specific mechanism of action. पुरानी कैडजिंग्स में आपको ये आंसर खुद डिग आउट करना पड़ता था. बिग कैडजिंग में ये आंसर हमेशा से है. Luckily, the newer versions of mini कैडजिंग now have this diagram which explains all the GABA targets for the anti-epileptic drugs, and the legend which is given under that diagram explains and gives the name of each drug which is acting through those targets. तो अगर आप देखें कि हमारे पास नंबरिंग हुई है डिफरेंट टारगेट रिसेप्टर्स की, प्रोटीन्स की इन दी गैबा साइनैप्स जहाँ पे एंटी एपिलेप्टिक ड्रग्स एक्ट कर सकती हैं, और उन नंबरिंग को अगर आप रीड करो इन दी लेजेंड तो वो एक एक आपको बताती है कि वहाँ पे कौन सी. फॉर एग्जांपल द फर्स्ट वन जहाँ पे GAT1 है वहाँ विगाबैट्रिन एक्ट करती है, जहाँ पे GABA A रिसेप्टर है वहाँ बेंजोडाइज़ेपिन्स एक्ट करती हैं. ईच नंबर विच इज़ गिवन ऑन योर डायग्राम हैज़ बीन इलैबोरेटेड एक्सप्लेन्ड इन दी लेजेंड बिलो with the names of the drugs. So I think this very sufficiently and efficiently answers this question. The only difference is that here we have to convert this diagram into a table. So that table would have the first column of the drug name, the second column would be the target on GABA synapse, and the third one would be the mechanism of action. We can combine the second and third also. So just have to write the name of the drug and tell where it is going to act on the GABA synapse. For example, vigabatrin acts on the blocks the GAT1 transporter. Similarly, benzodiazepines they stimulate the GABA A receptor. इस तरह से आप लिस्ट डाउन करते जाएंगे और उसके आगे उसका मैकेनिज्म जो स्पेसिफिक है वो लिखते जाएंगे.